Welcome to the Superintendent's Hangout, where we discuss topics in education, charter schools, life in general, and not necessarily in that order. I'm your host, Dr. Sharetta. Come on in and hang out. In this episode, I was fortunate to sit down with Justus Benjamin. Justus describes himself as a recovering attorney, now turned certified sommelier. His love of wine has turned into 3 exciting concepts in San Diego. For over 6 years, he's been a noteworthy leader at Boutique Vino, which is a locally famous wine shop and hangout in the East Village neighborhood, not too far from where this podcast is being recorded. Justus is a member of the East Village Association, which focuses on continued urban development and steady growth of new businesses. And we talk about some of the opportunities and challenges of doing business in downtown San Diego, in particular related to the homelessness crisis. Justus recently expanded his portfolio with the addition of the Charcuterie Bar, which he describes as, quote, a cheese shop with benefits. Coming this winter, he will be opening the Sabre Champagne Bar inside the Pendry San Diego in the Gaslamp district of San Diego, which is a little bit farther west from the East Village neighborhood where he started his venture originally. Justus encourages us to drink better by drinking small. His thoughtfully curated wine program contains selections from smaller estates and unique locales around the world. This was a wide-ranging conversation that detailed Justus's journey from first attempting medical school, finding that was not his calling, then going to law school, doing 10 years in various law firms on both coasts before he pursued his passion and eventually left his day job for his passion. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Welcome, Justus. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
I was wondering if you could start out with just telling us a little bit about yourself. What's your origin story and what brings you to the present moment here?
Yeah, I like to think I'm a kind of a chameleon of a human, or reinvented myself a few times, but a Navy brat. So I ended up in San Diego for high school. And I think like most young men, or maybe most kids, I tried to get as far away from my parents as possible. So I went to the Midwest for undergraduate at WashU. Was supposed to be the first doctor in the family, did pre-med. And then right at the end, I got disillusioned with the medical field, and I decided to apply to law school. Ended up going to law school in New York, Hofstra, and then practiced in New York for about 5 or 6 years, transferred out to San Diego, and practiced another 5 or 6 years. And then eventually I found myself falling in love with wine, and wine kind of led me to a newsletter. The newsletter kind of started taking up more and more of my time, so I was doing double duty. I realized that the UPS guy didn't want to talk about wine with me, so I started looking at places where I could open an actual physical shop, and so we ended up in the East Village. And it's we started as one little suite that was about 450 square feet, I like to call it a little shotgun wine bar, and now we are about 1,500 square feet. And we also opened a little cheese shop that does wine, and then hopefully sometime in the fall we're going to open a champagne bar inside the Pendry Hotel. So 3 different kind of phases, but all the way along, that's where I'm at.
What did your family think of almost having the first doctor in the family?
Yeah, I always like to say my mom cried when I told her the first time. She cried when I told her I got into law school. She cried in shame at my graduation of law school. And then she cried again when I told her I was leaving the law to be a somm and run a wine bar. But now she likes it, right? The goodies with wine are much better than the goodies as a lawyer. So she likes her free Rombauer every now and then.
Yeah, she gets tangible benefits, right?
Yes, exactly. It took her a while to come around, but now she's happy.
So you probably chose the 2 most difficult states to pass the bar in, right? New York and California.
Yeah, hindsight being 20/20, right? So as a kid, I was like, I just want to live in New York City. I didn't realize, that the bar was going to be hard. And then, living in New York City for so long, I was like, I just want to have the sunshine and not have to wear a jacket when I'm in the office. So I need to get back to California. So it's just a kind of a unhappy coincidence that both of those bars were hard.
What was your area of expertise and area of focus in the law?
Yeah, I wanted to be a tax attorney when I was in school because I wanted to get out and really help people. And then when I got out or graduated, it was the mortgage-backed security crisis. And so I had a minor in accounting. And so what I ended up getting into was securities litigation. So working with people like Goldman Sachs on the defense side, and then, kind of high white-collar ambulance chasing on the other side when I did plaintiff's work. But really looking into using that forensic accounting to kind of unwind some of these tranches and some of the wrongdoing and bring suits, especially with banks like Wachovia and Washington Mutual went under, Lehman Brothers, I worked on that case. So kind of, you get funneled to where the jobs are. And there weren't a lot of jobs in taxes or tax law when I got out. And so those are jobs that were available, especially in New York City being a financial center.
I just saw in the paper today where one of the co-founders of Countrywide just passed away.
Yeah, exactly.
And to his death, he said that it wasn't his fault. The no-doc home loan that was then bundled with a whole bunch of other no-doc home loans, right?
Exactly, yeah, and it seems like forever ago. And I guess it was a little while ago, but I talk to people sometimes, and I mention Lehman Brothers or Washington or Wachovia, right? And people don't even know those banks or those mortgage houses, which is really interesting.
So you start the wine newsletter. Tell us a little bit about that. Is that still going on?
I don't do the newsletter anymore. We have a wine club now.
Okay.
So the newsletter was kind of my outlet because I like people. That's really why I'm in wine, is for fellowship. But the part of the law that I was in was it's less client facing, right? You do have clients, but their institutional investors are very large. So you're really dealing with representatives of larger corporations. And so you lack kind of that collegial or familial workplace. And for me, wine, my family always knew cocktails and beer and that kind of stuff, being from the New Orleans area. But law school was the first place I really got into wine. And I love food, and like wine and food are kind of the two things that it's really the only alcohol for me that goes with food.
Right.
And food is really sitting around a table. And so I went down the rabbit hole. So I fell in love with it. I nerded out. I got a little Type 85 license, which is you could run a wine shop out of an office in your house. And so I would buy 10 wines a month. I'd buy like a case, which is 12 bottles. And I would just email these guys. So I would read books. I would read, articles from San Francisco, Wine Chronicle, and all those kind of things. And I just emailed these producers. And I said, hey, I've got a little wine thing. Do you have a case of wine for me? Do you have 2 cases of wine? I just want to throw it into my newsletter. And eventually it started mushrooming, right? So 12 bottles, or I would do five wines to 10 wines a month. But really I could only, at that point, do about 12 people. And then it became 24 people. Then it became 36 people, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm spending more time packaging wine, writing newsletters, and also working a day job. So
it's hard to keep the billable hours up when you're doing that, right?
Exactly right. So burning the candle on both ends a little bit.
And so from there, at a certain point, you must have had a jumping off point, right? How did that look in your life, where you went from a dependable paycheck to owning your own business, and at a certain point, the dependable paycheck's going to have to sunset?
Yeah, it was right about the time when I got the space. And so what I did was in my mind it made sense, but it was not a great business idea at the time. I said I'd work at the law firm in the daytime, and then when I got off, I would open the shop, but I wouldn't have any real hours, right? So I thought it would be really cool. It's just a wine shop. If it's open, it's open. So I'd work every day about like 5 or 6. I'd go downtown to the East Village, and then I would open. And then every Saturday and Sunday I would be open in regular hours. And some people were like, oh, this is great, right? And when people were there and they loved it. And then, maybe it'd be like 2 or 3 weeks later, they would say, hey, I tried to come by on Thursday and you weren't open. I said, oh, yeah, it's just when I'm here, I'm here. And when I'm not, they're kind of like, well, I like this place, but that doesn't work. You're not going to make it that way, right? And at some point I decided, you know what, the wine started piling up instead of going out the door. And I looked at it and I said, if we're going to do it, let's actually do it, right? Because I think having the other steady paycheck, which is good, also kind of took away the need to make it work,
Like
right?
the hunger, right?
Right, exactly. Because it was fine, right? I was like, oh, if I'm not open, who cares, right? But the customers and the community were like, well, this guy's, it's weird, right? We can't go here. And said, you know what, my license is still active. I said to myself, I'll always keep my day job, which for me is paying my bar fee every year. But let's give it a real honest go.
So it's almost like the transition from fulfilling hobby to a professional endeavor.
Right, exactly. And it became, work became the chore. Like I used to enjoy going to the office, and then all of a sudden it was like I was going to the office to kill that time, knock that out so that I could go to my passion, which is get down to the wine shop. And businesses are like babies, right? You've got to care for them, you've got to nurture them, or they don't grow.
What's been the most unexpected challenge that you've had to date?
I would say learning the law degree and the law training was great for getting things like the permitting done, understanding the legal ramifications of something, right? That method of thinking I think is invaluable. But the unexpected things are kind of all of the ancillary admin stuff that you never think about, right? It's getting a business license, it's sales tax, it's doing your federal taxes.
Welcome to California.
Right, exactly. So it's all these things, and there's no real crash course. So sometimes I would just be doing stuff and hanging out, and then I would get a letter from the city that says, hey, have we've noticed you've been open for 3 years, and I don't know how they noticed, but I'm sure because I'm doing sales tax. And they said, you owe 3 years of business licensing. I was like, oh, okay, wow, that's, and those kind of things that's kind of the hard part. Because the dream is the easy part, right? Having the idea is the easy part. But then so much of your effort and your time goes into executing the idea that you don't also realize that there's a lot of regulations, which are, good or bad, sometimes necessary to realize that dream and keep it functioning. So that, I think, was the most unexpected challenge.
Do you have employees?
Yes. So we've got 4 at the wine shop, and we've got 3 at the cheese shop now.
And that's its own
other little bag. Now I'm spoiled because they're all great and wonderful. But it took, hiring people and trusting them with kind of your baby is really, really difficult. And you don't realize, looking back, a lot of the issue was me, right? I didn't know how to manage people, but you project outward and you say, well, these guys aren't great. And maybe it's a little bit of both. But now looking back, I feel like I'm a much better manager, a much better listener. Someone used to say, like, training someone and hiring someone is watching them do your job worse than you and being okay with it, right? And a lot of it's somewhat that, but it's a lot of you releasing control and trusting. It's like any relationship. It works when it's trusting, and I've been lucky enough to find really good people now.
Yeah, we're at 165 employees, I think, and I reflect on my journey over the years. I just started 18 years here, and I think about just the HR challenge, and that's, I think, why a lot of these, you see a lot of these companies they specialize in providing back office HR services for small businesses, because they know there's tons of people. Most business owners in America are like you, right? They're small, they have a dream, a passion. But no one wakes up and they're like, my passion is I want to do human resources
exactly
in my small business. And so that's a really tricky thing, and all the other regulations that come along with that. Yeah,
or even knowing that you should be providing that, right? So when I started, there was no HR. It was just like, would you like a job? Sure, I like a job. Okay, well, you take it's got to, and then you realize, that HR is important, right? It's you've got to give people packets and information and have avenues and ways to communicate and tools to communicate. But yeah, when you're right, when you start, that's not what you're thinking about. It's like, can you help? Yes, I can help. All right, let's do it.
Right. So you said you have a wine club.
Yes.
What does that look like?
We do 3 wines. So when I fell in love with wine, I joined, I think like a lot of wine people, I joined too many wine clubs, right? I went to Napa, I joined like 10 wine clubs. And I realized, and no fault of the wine club, but when you join at a winery, you get their wines, right? And it could be quarterly or monthly. But if you stay in long enough, you realize you're just getting the next year of that wine, right? You're not expanding it. You're loyal to that brand and it's great. But I get into wine because I want to expand my library of things, right? It's more about, wine is a condiment. It's a conduit to conversation. It's a condiment to food. And so my library is bigger than I can choose the right thing. And so our wine club, I wanted to say, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's never repeat a wine. We do 3 wines a month, and it's seasonal, right? It's whatever I'm drinking. You get no choices. There's no reds only. There's no whites only. Some months you get all whites. Some months you get all reds. But it's really about exploring wine and playing around with wine and really teaching people that wine is not a cocktail, right? Wine is, for Thanksgiving, we will do like a Beaujolais, which is this kind of French and light red wine that's perfect with turkey, which a lot of people haven't had, right? But the idea is it's only weird until you try it. Mm-hmm. And it's okay not to like it as long as you know why you don't like it. And so we're always trying to get people to drink differently.
So do you ship the wines out, or do people come to your shop?
So when we started, we really wanted to be like, I always joked that the shop is like a community trust. So I would not ship anyone's wine. I would say, hey, we have a pickup party. You can come taste the wine, but you guys have to come here and get it. One, because it was just me and I couldn't ship all the wine anymore. Right. But also, it became this kind of monthly thing where people in the neighborhood would be excited. They'd come down, or people lived in North County would come down. They would look forward to it. We do now ship it because a lot of our members now moved and they want to keep it, and so we do ship currently, but it kind of still, that monthly party is kind of a big fun thing, kind of one of our identities of the shop.
How do you compete with the big players that are out there, right? Because I'm not an expert in wine, but I'd imagine there are national wine club players, right? Yep. And there are probably chains of wine bars as well.
Yeah, so we our whole thing is we like being small. We like to say we're locally famous. And so our idea is we don't do, kind of the bigger wines, right? We try to stay small, artists and producers, because if you're buying something, let's say like Caymus, for instance, which is a great wine. Right. Once a Ralph's has it or a Vaughn's has it, they can buy it at such a scale.
Costco, right?
Or Costco,
yeah.
Right. They can buy it at such a scale that it would be wrong for me to sell it to you, right? They can just sell it to you at a better price. And also, you already know what you're getting there.
Right.
Right? And for me, a wine bar is about coming in and getting something unique or trying something different. Or if you're getting a cab, that this guy produces 200 cases of it, right? And he might come in and pour one day. The grocery stores, the bigger wine bars, they're selling to a different audience than what we're doing. I think we're trying to get people that are wine curious, but also really looking for less mass-produced kind of things, right, and less widely available.
How do you source your wines? Do you travel to do this, or?
Yeah, so we do a bunch of different ways. So we do, we have distributors, right, which everyone uses, but we tend to use smaller distributors that to kind of focus on classic or really kind of boutique-y guys. We do travel for it. We meet winemakers, we chat about them, and now it's nice with like social media, especially with, I hate to say a nice thing about COVID, but one of the outgrowths of COVID is a lot of these small wineries and even the bigger wineries that would never deign to go to these wine shops because they need to, started reaching out and started providing channels and direct channels. One, the margins are better for them, and they had to during COVID, but it increased kind of the access for everyone. And so now we are, the wine world got smaller, which is nice. There's always big players.
Right.
But some of these wineries looked and said, hey, yeah, we can ship this all to our distributor. We can take a 30% cut. Or what they found during COVID was their wine club members were saying, hey, you guys are in trouble. No one's going out to restaurants. We'll market it to us. We'll buy it. Hey, no one's going to restaurants, but we can do over-the-counter, right? We barred the door during COVID. We had like a little shop window. And a lot of these big wineries that no longer had restaurant sales said, hey, do you guys want to take this on? Would you like it? We'll make it available to you. And it was great, right? Because then restaurants would package food and we could sell you great wine. So that's kind of been one of the nice outgrowths of that kind of time.
How has inflation impacted you, if at all, in terms of customer base and perhaps your cost of operations?
Yeah, so everything's getting more expensive, right? Especially during COVID when shipping was bad and backed up. But we were talking about us buying from distributors or wineries. We get notices every quarter when they put a new portfolio out and they say, hey guys, just letting you know, all of our bottles have gone up, $1 to $2 a bottle, right? Which then gets
Passed on down the line.
Passed on down the line, right? So that's really been where it's gone up, and it, so far, on $1 a bottle of wine, that probably ends up being about, if we pay $1 for it, then you're going to pay like $1.30. It does register because sometimes people see wines and right, you get familiar with wines, and so I've had customers say, "Well, this was $20 last year; it's $22, this year." And just I think it's a conversation where you're honest with people, and most people understand, right? It's that cost. We're not creating a margin; it costs us more, and so to maintain that same margin, it's costing them more. And thankfully, it hasn't been a real impact. Although people, I think, are shopping less and are buying less, but it's just a function of everything being more expensive.
Yeah, I took an Uber recently traveling, and the guy said his business was way down just because fewer people were going out to restaurants. Yep. This was in San Francisco, so which is always expensive at any time. Yep. So you mentioned Napa. Do you also carry any wines from Valle de Guadalupe in Mexico and Baja?
We do. So we actually do. We did a trip there in May of last year. So we took some, we sold tickets for our customers. We did a little overnight there. I've always loved that area. I think the wines are kind of up and coming, and it's a great way to, Temecula's fun.
Right.
I think the Valle's a little more. Maybe the wines aren't at the level of Temecula yet, but they are pushing rapidly to do that, where I think Temecula sometimes is resting on its laurels. But it's great to be able to go an hour in either direction and get a completely different wine experience at different varietals.
And the culinary experience in Baja is pretty amazing.
The food is world class.
Yeah,
that is really why I tell most people to go. Right. The wine is sometimes challenging. Maybe it's a different palate than what people are used to. But the food and for the value that you're getting down there, it's really, really impressive. Yeah,
the natural beauty is pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go way beyond my expertise here, so I'm treading on. But the times that I've gone to Valle de Guadalupe, I see a lot of wines that are blends. Is that an intentional thing, do you think? Or is that simply that it's just a matter of trying to combine from very small vineyards and package it together?
That's a very traditional thing. So
okay.
Bordeaux, which is like most people know Bordeaux, most of those wines are blends.
They're blends.
So it's a classic way of when you are in a challenging growing region. So it's a little bit of both of what you said.
So it's not, blend isn't necessarily bad.
Blend is not necessarily bad. It's actually sometimes great because whenever you add a bunch of different things in something, you get instant complexity. But it also allows you for things like, so in Bordeaux they do it because sometimes Merlot ripens better than Cab or Cab Franc, and so we can use more Merlot this year. But if Cab ripens really well and we want more structure, we can use more Cab, right? So it gives you leeway for the art, right? For it to be creative and have fun. And sometimes, grapes when they are singular aren't as palatable sometimes, right? So blending is a traditional thing with wine. You'll see that in Paso Robles as well, with the Grenache Syrah Mourvèdre blends. It's that which is from the Rhone Valley, so it's a very classic way of doing it.
Are you seeing or hearing conversations about climate change and its impact on growing seasons and just, I guess, the taste of grapes and that sort of thing? Yeah.
So I was in France this past October, Napa before that, and what you're seeing is a lot of these. So if you go to the vineyards, and I think they're doing this in Temecula as well, they have research plots. And so what they've done is they've taken grapes that aren't necessarily grown in Napa or France. So in Napa they're doing Tempranillo and they're doing Touriga Nacional, which are Spanish and Portuguese grapes that withstand really, really high heats, and they're trying to see how they grow in Napa because they're trying to everyone's trying to get ahead of the curve. And what you're seeing in places like Oregon, which is known for Pinot, which is a nice, soft, very thin-skinned grape that can handle a lot of heat, as it gets hotter, you're seeing them plant more Cabernet, right? You're seeing them plant sturdier grapes. So there's a lot of, right now, research, things like that going into it to kind of get ahead of climate change. right? I think sadly, and maybe it's just a fact of life, they've accepted that we can't slow it down,
Right.
And we can't stop it. But it's a billions of dollar industry. We got to figure out a way to keep it going, and
Yeah.
so they'd rather introduce people to it early, right? If you start having Tempranillo now with your cab, 20 years from now you're going to be less jarred than if all of a sudden it becomes Napa Tempranillo instead of Napa Cabernet.
So wine's not going anywhere.
Wine's not going anywhere. I think one of the few things I know about life, humans will find a way to ferment something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you can find that in the Bible, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're located in downtown San Diego, specifically the East Village.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose that area, or perhaps it chose you, and also your role with the East Village Association, the business group?
Yeah, so I would say it more, a little bit chose me, and I chose it, right? Because that's what I could afford at the time. So I was looking at being on the harbor and doing all the fancy things, and then you get a price, and the port tells you this and that. I said, oh, well, maybe I should go a little inland and go to an area maybe not as popular, not as close to the water. So I ended up in that little space with the great landlord that really kind of gave me the leeway and the price point that I needed. But I like to think that now the East Village has kind of adopted me, and I've adopted it as a second home. So, I think every neighborhood has its challenges. East Village is great because when I went in there, I didn't really know much about it. And then, it's a great kind of artist community, or formerly an artist community. It's one of the bigger neighborhoods in San Diego, if not the biggest. And it's got its own cool little vibe, right? I know a lot of people now just go either Gaslamp or they go to Petco Park, but East Village has really cool breweries and an art scene, lots of shops in there, which has made it really, really fun. And it's a lot of regulars. It's a lot of locals down there. And also you get a good mix of tourists, right? We get Comic-Con and these kind of things. And a lot of, people that are moving to San Diego for the first time wind up in East Village. It's kind of a nice little gateway.
And we're just up the hill here from East Village, and actually, apologies to the listeners for the drilling sound in the background. We're in the building that we're in. There's some construction going on, so it's probably appropriate to the conversation about East Village as a location, because East Village is really in transition, right? Having been in San Diego now for 30 years, I remember when there's no way you would have put a wine bar in East Village. There wasn't much of anything going on that was good.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's changed a lot, but despite the opportunities, there are a lot of challenges with downtown San Diego. And can you talk to us a little bit about some of those?
Yeah, it's an interesting, like you said, it's interesting. There's a lot of new buildings going up, but we also have a huge homeless issue. And East Village is kind of the epicenter for San Diego's homeless issue. And I see it every day when I'm walking to work. I'll see a new condo or new apartment building going up, and I'll also see tents on the other side of the street. And it's, as a business owner, it's hard because I want people to be able to enjoy wine. Most people want to enjoy wine at night, and we want to make people feel safe and happy. But there's also, we want to treat everyone with respect, but also balancing the business aspect of that and figuring out how, if there was a solution that was easy, obviously we would have done it. But it's sometimes hard when you're a business owner. I've got ladies that work for me and coming in and they have to call the police sometimes, or Clean and Safe, to kind of help people move along or let us open the shop. And I think a lot of business owners feel like the city hasn't necessarily looked at their side of it. Yeah. Right. Everyone in this has a stake, and I think that sometimes we feel like we're a little lost in that stake.
I know there's I don't know if it's a lawsuit or just some talk of a lawsuit by a collection of business owners. Maybe you know more about that than I do.
Yeah, I think it was it's a lawsuit now, and I think it's kind of in response to. Most of my customers, I would say 80% of them, walk to my shop. And when there's tents on the side or tents on the sidewalk, what people are doing is they're then walking into the street, right? And it creates kind of this thing of people are driving, Padres games, walking on the street, and balancing that with the safety issues. And what we don't want, which is sometimes happens, that people decide, well, it's not worth it.
Right.
Right. It's not worth it to go to this restaurant or to this wine bar just because it's just going to be too much of a hassle, right? And trying to really balance that. And I think the lawsuit kind of grew out of businesses calling, right? We have Clean and Safe, and we would call, and in Clean and Safe's defense, they're overwhelmed, right? It's a bigger issue than that they.
That's a city service?
It's a city service. It's a nonprofit. So you can call Clean and Safe. Now it's an app, and they will escort you to your car, or they will come and clean up things or ask people to move along, which is a great service when it works. It's just, I think, the sheer number of calls that they are getting, then it becomes kind of a futile thing.
It's just, it seems like it doesn't matter who the mayor is, like him, hate him. It seems to just be this progression with an upward trajectory, right, in terms of numbers. Although I did see that the latest homeless count was actually showed some decrease, especially because they changed. Now they're supposedly going to cite folks for public camping.
Yes,
we'll see if that happens.
I think that starts on the 30th. I think. And I don't know too much about it, but I feel like citing people that don't have homes is somewhat futile.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, where are you going to send the bill?
That's right.
Would they pay the bill if they could get it anyway? Right. I think there has to be a way to actually provide places for them to go, but also get them to go there. Right? And I think that's the crux of most of these issues is even if we build these spaces, how do we get people to go? Right? If they don't want to go.
Right.
And I think that's really that's where it always stops, right? Because you have to treat people with dignity. They are people, but we also have to solve this problem for health and safety and all these other things. And I think that is the sticking point. I wish I knew the solution, but I think that's always the thing why these things don't ever go as well as possible, right? And I will say the one nice thing I anecdotally experienced, I don't see that many families out there, right? I don't see that many children out there. So I would like to think that means that they are getting services, and the people that want to get services are getting them. I think it's sometimes a mental health issue that the people that should be getting some services aren't aware that they should or can't.
Yeah, I have an upcoming interview with the mayor of Escondido, Dane White, who, apart from being the youngest mayor in Escondido's history, was homeless himself for a period of a couple of years. And he talks about the fact that there's some percentage of the population, a homeless population, who are just going to refuse shelter.
Yes.
There's some percentage. But the overlay of mental health issues and substance abuse is really where the crux of the challenge is. And then the families, if you can find a place to house them, that takes some of the edge off. But I think the high profile, we tend to think of homelessness as kind of a homogeneous type of problem, and it's not, right? Everybody's story is so different.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I was in Waikiki Beach, and I never thought that I would I'm just a New York kid who ended up in Hawaii for work, and the number of homeless people living there, camping on the beach. I see why, if you're going to choose a place, that would be the place.
Right, yeah.
But they have the same challenges.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's frustrating for people that go there, that pay a lot to go there, or I think San Diegans, right? We pay a lot to live here, and then to see someone on the street kind of occupying your same space is sometimes frustrating.
So you talked a lot about the wine side of things. What about the cheese? So there's got to be a science and an art to that too, right? The selection and the promotion, and talk a little bit about that.
I'd like to say I'm just laundering the things that I love. Cheese, meat, and wine. Yeah, so I'm more of a grazer now on the stage of my eating life, and so we do cheese boards at the shop, and people would come in, and they would say, "Well, can you do an event?" And it really, the wine bar wasn't really built for it. And we found like this cute little spot on 10th and Island, and I said, what we should do is just get a cheese case. We'll do a cheese bar, and make it more like a bistro, right? We do event trays to go, but it's one of those great pairings of the world. It's cheese and meat and wine, and just people hanging out. And one of my favorite restaurants, Cucina Bar, used to have this great communal table, which is no longer there. They remodeled. But that's what we did there, right? We put a long communal table. It seats 12 people. And it's great to see people come in and they're by themselves. And all of a sudden, when you're across from someone, you're eating wine and cheese, that they strike up a conversation. And then it becomes friends. And then it becomes, this kind of, even if it's just friends for the hour that you're there eating cheese and meat, that to me is what I got into all of this for, to create spaces for people. And we don't put televisions in any of our spaces because I want, we have phones, we have televisions, we have everything.
Right.
It's great sometimes to remember the art of conversation.
Right. Where you're not looking over someone's shoulder at the Padres losing yet again.
Right, exactly. Well, that's a sore subject, but yeah.
That is.
But it's really fun to see, and I see it more in younger people than me too that come there for dates, which, again, anecdotally, they don't have that same. And me and you grew up, we didn't, our phones didn't even have color, and we had pagers and other things. To see them actually have to talk and it's and they like it, right? I think there is this idea that we can exist in this phone and social media, and that sometimes that's fun, but I don't think, like you said, wine's not going anywhere. I don't think people interacting with one another is going anywhere.
What advice or what counsel can you give someone who doesn't know much about wine, is curious but maybe intimidated?
Yeah, I think that's the one real knock on wine that I think beer has and that cocktails have, is this idea of pretension, right? This is, you have to know things. You need to put a jacket on. You need to have shoes on.
You need to speak with a British accent.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm here in a t-shirt and flip flops. I'll be at work later, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do, is kind of demystify wine. I say go in there and try things. Find a wine shop that you like. Everyone's palate's different. I know people are into wine ratings, and I kind of give the same advice. Try one of the wines that they rate. If you like the wine, maybe that rater and you are good, right? And you should trust his rate. If you don't like the wine, you should find someone else. And that's the same thing with the wine shop. Go somewhere, walk in, and be honest and communicative, right? I like this. What do you have that's like that, but I want to try something different, right? And we're a lot like school librarians. We just want someone to talk to us. That's every sommelier in the world, right? We want to get you to the right place. And so if you come in and you say, I'm currently drinking really heavy cabs from Napa, I want something like that, but I don't want it to be Napa cab. We might steer you to some place in Sicily, right? And all of a sudden you're there, and it might be fruity, but it's going to have a touch of earth, right? And I always say, just try wine, because there's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. And education is really the way to do it, right? Do tastings, take small little pours, but just find a place that cares about you finding the right thing.
Yeah, because I think the rating systems, right? Like, I know I'm not a big wine drinker, but you go to Bevmo or wherever and you're like, oh, this has 87 points. And you're like, is this event worth more for me or the person who I want to share it with? Do I care about them more? Should I go to 92 point? And then there's the dollar thing. And then you got people who go, I don't really care. I just get $2 chuck at Trader Joe's, which is now whatever, $4, but whatever. And so it's interesting. It can be intimidating, I think, because with a beer or cocktail, like anybody can go in and go, hey, what do you got in IPA?
Yeah.
Like, just give me an IPA.
Well, and the beauty of kind of beer and liquor is inconsistency. You don't want your Bud Light to taste different than you had it from 10 years ago, right? And the beauty of wine is it's inconsistent from year to year. It's a moment in time, which I think that is the one thing that makes wine fantastic, and it's the one thing that makes wine infuriating. Because I had so many people come in and I was like, I love this producer. I got this wine last year. Why does it taste different? And I said, well, how was your year last year? Was it exactly the same as this year? That is infuriating about wine, but it's also what makes you fall in love with it, because it's always changing. Right? And I think it's really the only liquor or the only alcoholic beverage that does that. Right? You want your tequila to taste the same way when you drink it years from now as it does now. And that makes it easier, right? If you've had Ballast Point Sculpin, you know that you can trust that that's going to taste like that in your whatever bar in the world you want to go to. And wine is not like that. It requires a little bit of commitment and a little bit of learning.
So I see in your bio that you've got Champagne Bar plans coming up.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
again, laundering the things I love. So champagne bubbles is one of my favorite things. We were lucky enough to run into one of the owners of the Pendry just doing the wine thing. It's one of the great things I love about being in the bar hospitality space. You can meet all walks of people, and he makes his own wine. He said, you know what we should do? We should build a champagne bar together. And this was years ago, pre-COVID. And I said, yeah, whatever, right? And he came back and he said, no, look, I've got the space now in the building. Let's do this. Let's build a champagne bar and try to make something that San Diego, I think, needs. So San Diego's had a couple champagne bars before. And again, going along that same path, my whole thing is I love to educate people and make things accessible. And so it'll be some champagne, but it'll also be Spanish cava and Prosecco and American sparkling so that people can taste different things at different price points. And of course, we'll have some still wines there. And it's also the thing of, yes, it's a champagne bar. No, you don't have to wear a tie, right? You don't even have to wear shoes if you don't want to. It's more about, like when you go places overseas, especially France or Italy, they treat wine like we treat beer.
That's right.
Right? And so you see a lot more people drinking and enjoying it. It doesn't mean the quality is actually a lot higher than our wine. And that's what I'm trying to emulate, right? This idea that it doesn't have to be a production. It's sometimes just fun, right? It's less about the wine. It's more about the people. Because that, like you said in your grocery store Bevmo example, it's everything we do is about mood, food, and hospitality and who you're with. All right? And if you're with a friend that's always drinking out of solo cups, you're not going to open champagne for them. And that's fine, right? Because there's other options. It doesn't mean you're not friends, but, and if you're going on out on a date or it's an anniversary, you're obviously going to pay a little more attention to whatever you're doing, eating or drinking.
What's your favorite wine right now? What are you thinking about drinking when you have a moment to relax this evening?
Wow, that's a great question because they're kind of all my babies. But it's been so hot. So I'm drinking a lot of Sancerre, which is a French Sauvignon Blanc, and a lot of rosé. I always like to say that there's this whole thing, real men drink pink. And rosé is like the Swiss Army knife or the little black dress of wines. It goes with everything or it goes by itself, right? And I try to encourage, it's always a great price point. I would say you could drink the best rosé wine in the world at $75 if you wanted to. But I would say most rosés are in the $20 range are fantastic. As long as they're dry, they're really wonderful. And, it's going to be 84 at the beach tomorrow, right? So drinking a lot of rosé.
Is it ever too early to have a glass of wine in the day?
So when I
by itself, not mixed, not diluted with something.
I say no. I'm a big fan of day drinking because as I get older, I want to end earlier.
Yeah.
So I would say the answer to the question is no because it allows me to end earlier.
Yeah.
But no. So when I took the SOM exam or the second level of the SOM exam, they tell you to not brush your teeth, but to have a glass of really dry, high acidic wine or swish your mouth with it to kind of prep yourself. And in the same way, a lot of us do mimosas for brunch, right? Or we do like a michelada or something. Wine is actually a little lower alcohol than those things.
Right.
Translates a little better, and it cuts through the richness. So I say look, if it's an eye opener, yes, we have an issue.
Right.
But if you're having like eggs and pancakes and things like that, and you want a glass of bubbles, I think I think wine is one of the better accompaniments to food. So I would say no, not a problem.
What's the process that someone goes through to become certified?
So there's four levels to become a master som. So I think most people have seen, well, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people have seen the som movies. And so level 1 is a 2-day test. So you're in a room 8 hours a day. They kind of take you through how to take the test. You get briefed on kind of the wines of the world. And then you take a test at the end. You pass the test. You are now an introductory. You're not a som yet, but you're now allowed to take level 2. And so level 2 is a much bigger jump. You've got to be in wine for about 1.5 to 2 years, be working in the industry. And so this is when you get the blind taste, right? So you get 4 wines, which you've got to blind taste and get correct. You have service, which is opening a bottle of champagne. They create kind of a mock restaurant.
Wow.
And so they the maitre d' comes out. He says, these are our specials of the night. These are our wines of the night. You have a 6 top. This is an anniversary party. Go. And they open the doors and you go in, and so they ask you questions. You do these things all while you are talking about cocktails and wine and these kind of things. And then at the end of that, you have a theory exam. So it's a whole long, it's about an 8-hour day. And I would say the pass rate on that is about 20 to 25%. So it's a very difficult exam.
Kind of like the bar.
Kind of like the bar, yeah, exactly. Kind of like the bar, except they don't make you do a mock trial for the bar, so and a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
And then so level 3 is what I'm sitting for now, or going to be testing into. You, instead of getting 30 minutes to blind 4 wines, you get down to, I think it's about 20 minutes, and you get no paper. And they keep increasing everything. So at the end, there's only about 250 to 300 master somms in the world.
So that's level 4.
That's level 4. So level 3, I think there's maybe 1,000 in the country. So as everything, as you go along, it gets progressively harder. But it's really about, and I would say blind tasting is like a great parlor trick, but it's a great way to investigate that example when I said you walk into a wine shop, what do I want? If you're a great blind taster and you know the markers of wine, I can get you to where you need to go, right? And get you that bottle in your hand, and that's really what it's about.
So there is some inherent ability that's part of this?
Yeah, I think there's some inherent ability, but there's also, like everything, the more that you do something, you see the patterns, right? And so you can see the pattern of what a Napa Cab generally looks, smells, tastes like. You can see a pattern of what a Chardonnay looks. And so when you do it blind, you're looking for those markers, right? It's more of a game of what is it not, right? Mm-hmm. So if I know Chardonnay spends some time in oak, generally it's going to have vanilla and a little butter to it. I know that Sauv Blanc almost never does that. So it's not Sauv Blanc, right? And I can say it's not Riesling. So now I'm down to like 2 wines. I'm with Chenin Blanc and I'm with Chardonnay. And I'm comparing and saying, well, Chenin Blanc is usually woolly. It has honey. This doesn't have honeys, right? So it's not Chenin Blanc. And that's kind of how you get to tasting. And
then you spit it out.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, I know.
And otherwise, everyone's like, do I get to tie one on?
Yeah. You especially when, so I would say summertime, we're not really buying that much, but when we're in real buy mode, we probably taste 50 to 60 wines a week, right? Wow. So you have to. And the other issue is not only getting drunk, but it also burns out your palate, right? So if you spit it, it kind of keeps you fresh for longer.
Yeah, because after several, I'm sure everything gets dulled.
Correct.
Right? Everything starts tasting good.
Yes. Yeah. Everything tastes good. Everything looks good. and you're buying too much wine. Yeah. Exactly.
It's interesting. So the whole, you always, for people who don't know anything about wine, they kind of joke about this was grown on the South Slope and it has a hint of such and such, but that's real. Yeah, for people who know, that's real.
Yeah, because those have different markers. So generally south-facing slopes get more sunlight, right? And so you get a riper berry. So when things ripen, the alcohol generally goes up. So as things ripen, the sugar goes up. When you ferment things, 1 sugar becomes 2 alcohols. So the more ripe the grape, the more alcoholic on the back end, which alcohol feels different than water, right? And so there are things that you can kind of figure out and guess, right? So if you're drinking 2 wines that you know are the same grape, but one is much more apparent in alcohol and much more lush, you can guess that at least it's a warmer climate.
Is there anything that we have not touched on in our conversation today that you'd like to leave our listeners with about, your journey, maybe some advice for folks who start out in one career and then are tempted by a passion?
Yeah, I would say my dad always says this, like, son, you've got 3 or 4 times in your life to reinvent yourself, but do it smartly. And so, I chased my passion, but I didn't just completely leave law, right? I kept my job until I couldn't keep the job. I did the med school thing until I just couldn't, right? I did pre-med, but at that touchstone moment, it was like, well, do I really want to do this? Will I be a good doctor? Will I enjoy being a doctor? Or do I really want to do something that's more in the legal field? And I think paying attention to really how you feel, despite, everyone has opinion on everything you do. But also taking the tools from the other things that you do, right? So being a lawyer helped me build a business, helped me, the ability to read and process and delineate things helps me to be a better wine person, right? And being a better wine person made me be a better manager, right? Because paying attention is half the job, and listening to people, right? It's humbling to start a small business, because especially when it's just you, but once you take on other people's lives and livelihoods, it's a real responsibility, and you really have to kind of grow.
I'd imagine that the advent of social media has helped somewhat, right? It's probably a good time in history to start a venture like yours that's kind of a hybrid, right, of a number of brick and mortar locales, as well as a wine club and shipping and all those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, social media it's great free advertising, right? We don't have to buy commercials. Right. We don't have to buy ads in newspapers. People will follow you on social media. Sometimes creating content is hard, but also I think, we're irreverent. So boutique_Vino is our what, we do things that we are doing, right? So we Sabre Champagne and we put it on our Instagram where we use a sword. We let people do it on their birthday, right? So we get Kevlar gloves for them. They get to use the sword. It's become kind of like our little calling card.
So they chop it?
Yep, they chop it off, and then we drink. I always say we drink what we kill. So there's no waste there. But yeah, so it's a fun way to show people wine and that it can be fun. You can see our shop, which is kind of like woodsy and fun. What we're tasting before we buy it. We like to take our reps hate it, but we love to take pictures of them and put them on and say, "Hey, Brian is in from here, and we're tasting this today." And I think it lifts the veil, right? It makes you a part of the community, and it lets people see, "Hey, you guys are just guys. You're just people like us." And that makes it kind of takes away the pretension of the wine, right? Like, yeah, we have certifications and all those kind of things. But we're also just enjoy wine, right? We just enjoy finding you guys the right things.
I'd like to close with a question that I pose to most of the guests, which is, imagine that you get the opportunity to create a billboard for the 5 freeway, and people are driving by at 65, 70 miles an hour. What message do you put on there about your vision for the work you do, the passion you have, and conveying that to the world? Something that folks will remember as they whiz by.
Gimmicks over substance. Substance over gimmicks, right? I think San Diego it's a gorgeous city, especially with hospitality. But I think a lot of people, or a lot of our venues now they're pretty, they are cool. This thing moves, smokes come out of here, and I think we lose the craft. We're losing kind of the artisan things of, well, was the food any good? And then people say, oh, but it was pretty, right? Or was the wine list any good? Yeah, but it was right. The
nice view.
Right, exactly. And I always try to instill that into my staff. And when we go out in the city, we try to support guys that are really trying to do substance over. It doesn't mean it can't be pretty, but I think that's a thing to apply for life, right? If the substance is good, everything else will kind of come with it. Right, we may not be the prettiest shop, but I like to think that we've got one of the better wine lists.
Yeah, and that's actually a somewhat of an East Coast ethos. Myself being from the East Coast, it took me a long time in San Diego to kind of accept that there was some beautiful veneer, and there's value in that, but to get to that substance, you don't always find it.
Yeah, and I would say San Diego in a lot of ways. It's an old city, but it's a new city in a lot of ways, right? We don't have, especially on the East Coast, you can go to a deli, may not look like much, but that deli might have been there for 100 years.
Generations.
Right. And San Diego doesn't always have that, right? And so we're getting there, but I think we are on the front end of that.
Well, thank you very much, Justus, for your time this afternoon. I know you got to get to work and start tasting, and good luck with the level 3 of your certification. And it was great chatting with you this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Superintendent's Hangout. You can follow me on Twitter at DVS1970. Please be sure to share this show with friends and family on social media and in the real world. Thank you to Brad Bacayal for editing and production assistance, and to Tina Royster for scheduling and logistics. Thanks for hanging out, and have a great day.